First of all, I would love for you guys to individually explain why you decided to get into the field that you went into. So we can just go down the line and you guys can explain that.
So you're starting from the beginning of the field.
Yeah, start from the beginning.
Yeah.
What about this career that you ended up in, what drew you to that? Why were you interested in that work?
I'm probably an anomaly in that I wasn't interested in joining the Bureau. I was graduated from college many years after high school. I'd been in the Army, had been a construction worker, was going to night school. I wanted to stay in accounting, and I wasn't able to find a job that way. I answered an ad in the newspaper for the Bureau. Here I am. So it was, I'm glad I didn't become an accountant. I'm glad I didn't stay with construction. And the Bureau has been a lot of opportunities. I went away from what I call the knuckle draggers. He calls us the rubber gun squad. I went into counterintelligence and counterterrorism, and that was where I concentrated my interests.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. What about you? What made you want to get into it?
Well, actually, I wanted to fly jets. I wanted to be a fighter pilot, like most young men do. And when I found out that I didn't meet all the qualifications because I had started that type of education too late, I decided I wanted to be in the FBI because law enforcement was something that I dreamed about, as a lot of people do. And I wanted to work for an agency where I'd be able to travel. And so I changed my major in school and got into accounting, became a CPA, certified fraud examiner, and was hired as a special agent accountant. Spent years in Jacksonville, Florida, Kansas City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. And the decision to become an accountant in the FBI is because even in murder cases, sometimes just follow the money. What do they do with the results? So it allowed me to get into a lot of different areas, and so I enjoyed every minute of it.
That's cool. Right. Why'd you get into it?
Started my career as a first responder in Birmingham years ago. I grew up in Mobile in a maritime atmosphere with the U.S. Customs. I always found their work interesting. Got out of undergraduate school in debt. Couldn't afford to go to law school right away. Had to have a job. Police departments were hiring in those days, and the rest is pretty much. I had a number of assignments over 30 years. A lot of time in narcotics, white collar crime with the Alabama Ethics Commission, public corruption. Worked as an investigator in a prosecutor's office, saw firsthand what gratification that brings in finally seeing justice brought to victims, and followed it from there.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay.
I started in law enforcement in 1978 here in Shelby County. Worked a little over a year and a half. Dropped out, pursued another profession. And during the time of that profession, I realized I need to be back in law enforcement. And where I was working at the time, which was a local mortuary, I was a licensed funeral director. There was a state representative that used to come in. And one day I approached him and said, "Jack, I need to get back into law enforcement, but I'm getting a little old. They don't want me." Age is caught up. He said, "Don't worry about it, Ray. I know an outfit in the state that just loves people that don't mind being around dead folks." And I looked at him, I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "The Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences, Quincy." If you're familiar with Quincy, the old corner that used to be on TV, Jack Clubman.
Okay, yeah.
So anyway, I said, "Jack, I do not have a scientific degree." He said, "That's all right. Know your background. They need investigators." Took about 18 months, but I was hired by ADFS and spent 10 years with them and learned an awful lot.
Wow, that's cool. All right. Okay. How'd you get into it?
I was on active duty in the Army within about a year of separation, so I always had an interest in law enforcement. So I was in the process of, I had sent applications to the standard FBI, Secret Service, IRS, all the usual. And my future father-in-law said, "Well, have you considered the Postal Inspection Service?" And I said, "What's that?" So one thing led to another. I got the number of a local inspector in Alabama, interviewed with him, got the paperwork in, and about a year later, received a job offer. And so that was 1975, and then was stationed with them in Waycross, Georgia, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, New York City, and then finally made our way back to Birmingham and kind of worked virtually every assignment the inspection service dealt with, both internal crimes, external crimes, prohibited mailings, drugs, child pornography, etc. And so retired, hit mandatory retirement in 2005.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So you guys have all talked about your incredible careers and all the different things that you've done. Explain how, and whoever can explain it, that'd be great. But all these are all different fields that really blend together to work together to solve cases. Talk about all the different components that are needed to be able to solve a case, all the different people with the different backgrounds, the accounting and the postal service. How do they all work together?
There's a phrase I use often in another group that I'm with, and that's none of us is smarter than all of us. And that we don't know what we'll pick out of his experience or out of Jim's experience, but down the road we may need it. And so it's Irish stew, if you will. It's everything in there, and you take what you like and use where you can, and we just all have the same goal. We all have different routes to it.
Yeah. Talk about the importance of the work that you guys do and the need for people to do these jobs to be able to solve these cases.
If you're looking at a full-time investigator, he's saddled every day with a new case, or every other day. They build up. The cold case is there. He has an opportunity when he can to look at it, but he can't devote the time full-time because of cases coming in. And then it goes into another corner up on the shelf, it becomes cold. You need people to work these cases. The money's not there in the budget. You have to hire people to do that, or have extra on board that you can pick from to work those cases.
You're aware nationwide that there's a trend in this profession that it's not as desirable as it once was. A number of factors play into that: civil liability, unrest, recruitment is down. Along with the people who are first responders, the lack of recruitment also makes you shorthanded in investigation. And as Ray said, they get new cases every day.
And in each one of these cases, there's a victim out there that has a family, and the family wants to know. And it's important to resolve their concerns and to give them some closure to be able to take a look at these things. And by bringing in people who can focus on that and volunteer their time and look at what was done, what could be done, because technology is changing, hairs and fibers, DNA in particular. It allows us to take the skills that we learned when we were doing investigations for the original agencies and apply them to these cold cases on a consistent basis, like Ray said, so that we can hopefully move that to a conclusion.
Let's talk about that too, because the technology has really changed over the years. You guys were talking about a case from the 60s. You know, this new technology comes in and we've got, you know, DNA technology, and we've got these cameras that capture things now and that are all over communities. And so talk about how that has played into making a difference in cases that may have been cold over the years.
Well,
Go ahead, Larry.
no, Jim, your turn.
Well, I was going to say, Shelby County Sheriff's Office has been really good with us as far as sending us out for additional training, et cetera. And one of the courses we went to that they emphasized, which we saw actually occur, is the two big things with cold cases are time and technology. Time will cause people maybe to come forward and speak who would not speak before. And the technology advances rapidly, especially DNA and all that. So those two big factors, time and technology, are what we try to take advantage of by talking to people that were spoken to before that wouldn't give up information that were now willing to for various reasons. And of course, the technology, the forensic science and the DNA technology has evolved rapidly, especially with cases 10, 12, 15 years old.
And we're talking about DNA. I was able to, well, let me back up a little bit. We had hit somewhat of a stalemate with the case. There was no evidence. And I got to thinking, I said, yeah, there's some evidence. And I remembered when I worked for ADFS, they do a lot of histology on deceased people. And that histology is in the file someplace. So I got with the present director, he's still there, Angelo Dell'Amato, and I told him what I was looking for, and I told him just about where he could find it in the department. Although they had moved, I said, you can't miss it. There's going to be a storeroom of histology slides. Just look for the case number. He was able to find it, took out the section, and got DNA out of it that was used.
Wow.
But there are a lot of other technologies too. Just the psychology of knowing when a person is lying to you, being able to read their movements, can you see language where a person, if they cross their arms, that means that they're backing away from you, trying to move away from you because they feel like they're getting pushed into a corner and might have to confess. And the other one that we used quite a bit in our cases was link analysis. So the advancement in computers, and we haven't gotten to AI yet, but I'm sure that might help at some point once it's kind of put in a usable format. But the link analysis puts all the subjects and the victims and the people, witnesses together, can link telephone numbers, social security numbers, locations, addresses, and sometimes it just jumps out at you, well, this is where we need to look.
That's cool. How has that changed things for you guys on cases?
It gives us more tools. That's all it is. It gives us more tools. Any investigator, regardless of their department and regardless of their finance or their budget, will use all the tools that are available. The issue is making sure they know that those tools are available. And we're fortunate Shelby County was forward on that. We were able to use these things, link analysis. Some of these things obviously cost money to have done, and we've never been hindered by that here. Go ahead, if it'll solve the case, if it'll lead to some kind of resolution, closure for the families, they've always supported that.
Okay, that's interesting. Let's talk about maybe some common misconceptions about the job. I don't know if there are any that really stand out for you guys, but a lot of people watch Dateline in 2020 and cold case CSI shows that solve this crime in 30 minutes.
It doesn't take a day to do it.
We've never solved one in an hour.
It takes years to do these things, and so talk about maybe some of the misconceptions that maybe people have about this work.
They expect the results too quickly. That's the main thing.
That's entertainment, what you see on TV.
And it's easy to do that when 30 years have passed and the case is now solved and everything's right there. We're still trying to find all the pieces to put it together so that we can manage it and hopefully move it to a conclusion. And it takes time, it really does.
And then too, in watching the cold case series, the entertainment section of TV, you pick up on where they were short or mistakes. I don't want to say mistakes because they just didn't throw it into the story, but something that had to be done, and they put the cart before the horse.
And police officers are no different than any other human being. Bias plays in, prejudice, all that factors into the original treatment of a case. And part of our responsibility was to go back, step back from all that, and look at it with new eyes, as they're fond of saying in our profession. So that's what we try to do.
And keep in mind, when the original case took place and they had all this information and potential evidence in front of them, they didn't have the technology back then. They didn't know how to collect it. They didn't know how to preserve it, or how much, for example, with DNA, they should preserve so that it would be usable at some point. And so it was frustrating for us to look back, but at the same time, if you look at the fact that maybe they had 3 homicides that day and they were pushed really hard, you can understand. And one of the things that concerned us is that we're looking at cases that in some cases officers that were still in the department had worked on. But in every case I saw, they were more than happy to talk to us, give us their remembrance of what happened, and to work with us to try to get it solved. So it's a group effort, and it was nice to see that.
To follow up on what Alton said, that was one thing that was emphasized in several different courses we went to that we tried to adhere to and make people aware of, is that the fact that we were revisiting cases was not a criticism of what was done or how it was done. It was just a fresh set of eyes by a group that was no better than the original group that worked the case. We were just a fresh set of eyes, and nothing that we found was critical of what was or wasn't done to start with. And that is something you have to adhere to with a cold case. You can't go in criticizing.
Even if the original investigator was still there, and then the cold case opens it up, and the DNA issue, everything from saliva to just touch DNA, we can find now. They couldn't find then. They didn't know about it then. But even if the same investigator's there and it's come out, he's got new cases he has to work. So it's not possible for him to go back and revisit that. That's where a cold case group can do that. And as Jim said, not an indictment, but just availability is the main thing.
Absolutely. I know you guys have touched on this briefly, but let's talk about the volume of cases. You had said that, it comes up, the case happens, they work on it, and then they don't find anything, they don't get what they need, and then this other case happens, and so that one moves a little further back on the shelf. Talk about the sheer volume of cases that there are to solve right now.
Well, what I mentioned, that cases are coming in just about every day. They happen at night, they happen during the day, and the investigators, everybody gets handed one somewhere down the line. All right, their case pile gets a little stacked. They may have been looking at the cold case, but you've got to get these out. This is warm right now. You got to pursue it. You give time when you can to the cold case, and eventually you hit that brick wall with the cold case, and you still have cases coming in. So you have to devote your time to the cases coming in. Not that you forgot about that cold case. It's always going to be there. And that's what I referred to. Most agencies need a cold case unit. That needs to be their priority.
We averaged about 2 cases per person, where we were the primary person that tried to keep it moving. But when we got a hot lead, everybody wants to be in. So we went out and looked in wells for bodies and things like that. So that all of us would obviously jump in. But a person on their deathbed may confess. And so that all of a sudden becomes a priority at that point. And it may not even be something that we were looking at. So then new cases are coming in while we still have the existing cases. And we get to a point where we're frustrated because we can't seem to push it forward, but yet something else comes in. So we've got a similar problem to what the detectives have with new cases coming in every day. Not as much volume, but there's plenty of work out there.
But in general, we do prioritize on homicides.
Yes.
But, and to add to what everybody has said is, from our experience in Shelby County, the majority of violent crimes are solved originally. I mean, the majority of all the violent crimes in Shelby County are addressed and are solved in a timely fashion. They didn't come to us. We would get the cases where there's no body, no evidence, it had been worked for years, and it just ran out of leads. So they said, take a look at it. So we would start from scratch. But just so there's no misunderstanding, it's not like we had a huge volume of unsolved cases. The majority of violent cases in the county are solved.
In Shelby County, we, as the cold case squad back then, occasionally even received a request for a cold case assistance from another department within Shelby County. So it wasn't all just Shelby County cases. The other major cities in the county that have police departments, have long-standing police departments, they too have limited resources. And occasionally they say, hey, can you guys take a look at this and give us a hand on that? So that has also been available for everybody in Shelby County.
And one of the other misconceptions that people have is that we can just jump up and go any place we want to. No, we were reserve deputies in Shelby County. So we had a case that came in involving someone who got information, but the subject was in Georgia. So we can't just get in the car and drive to Georgia. We have to do all kinds of, coordination with the departments over there to make sure they know we're coming into their territory. Even if we went into Jefferson County, we would need to call Jefferson County and say, we're going to be up here working on a case. If you want to have somebody come along with us, fine. So it's a little more difficult. And even going to interview prisoners, you see that on television all the time. Oh, they just jump in. Next thing you know, they're in Rikers Island in New York, interviewing some prisoner. Well, it don't happen that easily. And secondly, they're not equipped to have people coming in and out. In fact, we were told at one point they'd have to add extra guards just to protect us if we're going to go in there.
Wow. Were you ever concerned for your safety?
When? I mean, during our law enforcement, yeah, every day.
I was also a bomb tech, so yeah.
When we would go into certain locations in the general area, yes, there were times when we would have to call in every 30 minutes. If we didn't call in, they would send help.
Remember, we're all in plainclothes and unmarked cars in some neighborhoods that are known to be violent. So yes, there's some risk.
But no more so than any other officer going into that area.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than say, well, there's a bunch of old guys there. Maybe there's a problem.
And what Alton said about unmarked cars, you can go in certain territories or certain areas, and the criminal knows who you are. They can spot an unmarked car. It's innate in them. They just pick it right out. So, you got to watch your back.
It's hard to sneak up on them, let's put it that way.
Oh, man. So you guys, you do this your whole career, and you've put in all of these years of work, decades of work, and then you retire, and you decide to come back and volunteer. Why would you come back and volunteer at a job that you worked so hard at all of those
We all
years?
liked what we were doing, and for whatever reason, we had to leave what we were doing, and this gave us an opportunity to continue that. Something I didn't say when I was introducing myself, I feel very fortunate in that of all the jobs I've had, to include with the FBI, I never woke up dreading going to work. Yeah. I always liked going to work, and that was always a positive thing. And even with the Shelby County Sheriff's Office, it was, it's Wednesday, it was something to look forward to. And it just kept our interest going.
That's it. In a nutshell, we all thoroughly enjoyed our careers. And it was just a continuation.
And we missed something, okay? We missed having a gun and badge. We did. And so you volunteer
with your
and
own
you go
gun.
to a post and you get certified to be a reserve deputy and you get a gun and a badge. I mean, what a country. This is great. And we did love what we did. The interaction with people, seeing justice served, having people held accountable for the things that they've done, helping the victims. We miss that. I mean, that's part of volunteerism, to help other people, and we felt like we really were.
And one other thing, the camaraderie and the law enforcement side is different than you'll see anyplace else. And what we can say to each other when there's no cameras, there's no reporters, is different. And so we miss that as well.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Is it gratifying to be able to speak with a victim's family and to give them that closure once you have solved a case? What is that like when you're able to kind of close the chapter on a case that you've been working on so hard?
Have you ever been outside and take a deep breath when the air is fresh and clean? It's like taking a deep breath, and you have to see them. You have to read the expression on their face. It's heartwarming.
And there is a downside to that too. Sometimes the victims' family are thoroughly shocked at who turns out to be the perpetrator. Sometimes it's a real shock. to find that somebody you loved, trusted, would actually do this, and that's difficult.
Now, that's what they never show on the TV. Sometimes it's not well received.
Being a part of the Shelby County Cold Case Unit as volunteers, what was the day-to-day like for you guys? I know you described working on several cases at once, but what is the work like on a day-to-day basis to do something like that?
Well, basically, because everybody else had other endeavors besides this, it wasn't a full-time job. We would schedule usually one day a week. Sometimes it got to 2 or 3, depending on what was going on. We had a scheduled day, but then people were always making phone calls or going over their notes at home or drafting up a report to bring back in and submit later. So in order to free up the workday to go out and do interviews. So if we had a special project, it might be 2 or 3 days in a week. But generally, we would schedule a day. That would be the day we hope to go out and do interviews and all. And then the phone calls, lining things up, or follow-up phone calls, or reviewing your notes, putting things in order, that would be all done outside that day.
And on that day, we all met together and then can kick ideas around. Again, something that was observed triggers something in someone else's memory. Say, well, how about this? And so that's part of law enforcement, is sharing the information with your colleagues and getting other ideas.
And it's not just an 8-hour day during that week. We think about these cases all through the week. I've got a case I'm helping with right now, and I was driving with my wife, and she said, "You're preoccupied. What's going on?" I said, "I'm in court." And she said, "What do you mean you're in court?" I said, "I'm thinking about the defense attorney and the questions he's going to be asking me and how I can respond to that." And I said, "I think I've got a handle on it, but I need to keep working on it." So it's not just a one-day thing. It's part of your life. It becomes something that's important to you, and that you put whatever time is necessary into it.
And that sounds like a whole nother level of expertise to know what they're going to ask you when you get to court. But not only that, but then you have to do the investigative side and your work as a police officer. So it's all of those things. That's a lot of things to understand and to know about.
I was told by a really good attorney, a United States attorney, that a good investigator knows the law, proves all the necessary aspects of the law, and presents that case with a bow on it so that it can be moved forward. A great investigator knows what the defenses are and works out to make sure that they can respond to all the potential defenses. And that's what you have if you testify in court. Your prosecutor is going to ask you all the questions that you expect them to ask, but you have to be prepared for that cross-examination. And that's just part of the system. It's the best system in the world. It's not perfect, but it's good. And you have to be prepared.
But it only comes with experience, and sometimes that experience is painful.
It can be. Yes. Been there, done that.
Oh my goodness. I know that several of the cases that we've covered so far, we've spoken to family members, and they've got some people in mind that they think were responsible, or they think that they've got some evidence, or they're still waiting to get these answers about what happened to their family member. So for the families who still have all of those questions circulating and still don't have a resolve, what would you guys say to them, to people who might still have an unsolved case of their loved one?
That's what we're here for. We'll try to give honor to your family member and closure for you. And we will do our best. Can't guarantee anything, but we can guarantee we'll do our best.
And we don't mind them calling and asking, as long as it's not, every day. But just, I ask them to realize that it will take time and to be patient. It's not going to happen overnight, but we will do the best we can and put our full effort into trying to resolve it.